When you feel lost, it can feel like the ground beneath your feet has disappeared, like the map you trusted no longer makes sense. In those moments, the world gets loud. Advice comes from every direction. Opinions pull you apart. Fear starts speaking with confidence, and silence feels uncomfortable. Yet this is exactly where the greatest truth waits for you. Feeling lost is not a punishment. It is an invitation. It is life gently pushing you away from noise and back toward the deepest place within you, the place where God has always been speaking. Long before confusion arrived, before doubt took its first breath, a quiet wisdom was already planted inside you. God did not place answers outside of you and then walk away. He placed His guidance within you and trusted you to learn how to listen. Most people think being lost means they have failed, but often it means you have outgrown who you used to be. The old direction no longer fits, the old identity feels tight, and the familiar path no longer brings peace. So your soul pauses you, it slows you down. It strips away certainty so you can hear something deeper than habit. God's answers rarely arrive as noise. They arrive as knowing, as calm, as a gentle pull toward truth that doesn't need to argue or shout. When you stop running from the feeling of being lost and instead sit with it, something remarkable happens. The fear begins to soften, and beneath it you discover a quiet awareness saying, "You are not abandoned, you are being guided." Inside you is a voice that does not panic, it does not rush, it does not confuse. This voice feels steady, even when circumstances are shaking. That is where God answers you, not always in words, but in clarity, not always in miracles, but in peace. You may ask for signs in the sky, yet God often responds by aligning your heart. You may ask for certainty, yet God gives you courage first. When you learn to trust this inner guidance, you realize that even your confusion has purpose. Every unanswered question is shaping your faith. Every pause is preparing you for a clearer direction. Feeling lost humbles you, and humility is fertile ground for divine wisdom. When you admit you don't have all the answers, you finally make space for higher ones. God speaks most clearly when ego grows quiet. In stillness, you begin to recognize patterns, feelings, and gentle nudges you once ignored. You notice which thoughts bring peace and which drain your spirit. You sense which paths expand your heart and which shrink it. This discernment is not accidental. It is guidance unfolding naturally when you stop forcing outcomes and start trusting alignment. Do not rush your way out of this season. Some directions only become clear when you stop demanding immediate clarity. Just as dawn does not argue with the night but slowly replaces it, understanding arrives gradually when you stay present. God's timing is never late, but it is often quiet. When you listen inwardly, you may not receive a full map, but you will receive the next step, and the next step is always enough. Faith is not about seeing the entire road. It is about moving with confidence toward the inner peace that confirms you are walking with God. Remember this, you are never lost to God, even when you feel lost to yourself. Every detour, every delay, every moment of uncertainty is still within divine awareness. The same presence that formed your heart understands its confusion. Trust that what feels like emptiness is actually space being created for something truer. When you listen within, you are not listening alone. You are aligning with the wisdom that has carried humanity through darkness, doubt, and rebirth again and again. So be gentle with yourself. Sit quietly, breathe deeply, let the noise fade. Ask not with desperation, but with openness. The answer may come as calm assurance, as a sudden clarity, or as a simple sense of peace about your next move. That is God answering you inside. And once you learn to recognize this voice, you will realize you are never truly lost. You are being guided inward, where the truest direction has always lived. Feeling lost is not failure, even though the world often teaches you to see it that way. From a young age, you are told that certainty equals success, that clarity means strength, and that knowing exactly where you are going is proof that you are doing life right. So when confusion arrives, when direction fades, when the path ahead looks blurry, you begin to judge yourself harshly. You ask what went wrong, where you failed, why others seem to move forward while you feel stuck. But this understanding is incomplete and deeply unfair to the human journey. Feeling lost is not a sign that something has broken inside you. It is often a sign that something is being rearranged. It is not the end of growth, but the doorway to a deeper one. It is not collapse, it is a divine pause. A pause is uncomfortable because it interrupts momentum. It forces you to stop moving blindly and start paying attention. When life presses pause on your plans, it is not to shame you, but to save you from continuing in a direction that no longer serves your soul. Many people stay busy not because they are fulfilled, but because they are afraid of what they might hear in stillness. They rush forward even when their hearts are tired, even when their inner voice is whispering that something is off. Feeling lost arrives as a mercy. It slows you down enough to hear what you have been avoiding. It strips away false certainty so that real clarity can eventually rise. Failure feels heavy and condemning. It tells you that you are unworthy, behind, or incapable. A divine pause feels different, even if it is painful. Beneath the discomfort, there is a quiet sense that something meaningful is happening, even if you cannot name it yet. When you are truly failing, your spirit shrinks. When you are pausing for growth, your spirit aches but expands. You may feel confused, but you are also becoming more honest. You may feel uncertain, but you are also becoming more aware. This is not the energy of defeat, it is the energy of transition. Think about how many transformations in life begin with disorientation. A seed buried in the soil does not know it is becoming a tree. It experiences darkness, pressure, and stillness before it ever reaches light. If the seed could think, it might believe it had been lost or abandoned. Yet the very conditions that feel like an ending are the ones making growth possible. In the same way, your moments of feeling lost are often the soil in which a truer version of you is forming. God does not rush this process, because rushing would weaken what is being built. The mind craves immediate answers, but the soul grows through waiting. When you feel lost, your ego wants quick solutions, labels, and guarantees. But divine guidance often works in layers, not shortcuts. First comes the pause, then comes the questioning, then comes the stripping away of what is no longer aligned. Only after that does clarity begin to form. If God gave you the final destination before you were ready, you might cling to old habits, old fears, and old identities that cannot survive where you are meant to go. The pause prepares you for the weight of the calling ahead. Many people look back on their lives and realize that the moments they once feared the most were actually the turning points that saved them, the job loss that forced them to reevaluate their worth, the relationship ending that made space for self-respect, the season of confusion that pushed them inward where they finally met themselves honestly. At the time, it felt like being lost. In hindsight, it was guidance in disguise. God rarely shouts direction through comfort alone. Often he whispers through discomfort because discomfort has a way of getting your full attention. Feeling lost also teaches humility, and humility is essential for wisdom. When you believe you have everything figured out, you stop listening. When you accept that you do not know, you become teachable again. You begin to notice subtle truths you once ignored. You start questioning beliefs you inherited without reflection. You become open to learning not just from success, but from silence, failure, and waiting. This openness is not weakness, it is strength in its most mature form. It is the posture that allows divine insight to enter. There is also a deep compassion hidden inside this pause. God knows how much noise you carry, how many expectations you are trying to meet, how many roles you are playing for others. Feeling lost interrupts the performance. It gives you permission to admit that you are tired of pretending you know. It allows you to say, even quietly, that you need guidance beyond your own understanding. This honesty is not something to be ashamed of. It is a prayer in itself, and prayers like this are always heard. When you stop labeling yourself as a failure for feeling lost, you create room for curiosity instead of judgment. You start asking different questions. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" you ask, "What is trying to change within me?" Instead of asking, "Why can't I move forward?" you ask, "What is asking for my attention right now?" These questions lead you inward, where real answers live. The pause becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. It is important to understand that divine pauses are not empty. Even when nothing seems to be happening on the surface, something is always happening beneath. Your values are being refined. Your patience is being strengthened. Your dependence on external validation is being loosened. Your inner voice is becoming clearer. Growth during a pause is subtle, but it is powerful. It prepares you to move forward with intention instead of impulse. Eventually, clarity does return, but it returns differently than before. It is quieter, steadier, and less dramatic. It does not scream urgency, it whispers alignment. You feel it not as excitement alone, but as peace. You may not have every answer, but you have enough certainty to take the next step without betraying yourself. This is the gift of the pause. It teaches you to trust guidance that comes from within, not pressure from outside. So when you find yourself feeling lost, resist the urge to panic. Resist the temptation to compare your timeline to someone else's. Do not rush to fill the silence with distractions just to feel productive again. Sit with the pause, respect it, listen inside it. There is wisdom forming there that cannot be accessed any other way. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. You are not failing, you are being redirected. In time you will see that this season did not delay your life, it deepened it. It did not weaken your faith, it refined it. And one day, you will speak to someone else who feels lost, and you will recognize the look in their eyes. You will not judge them or rush them. You will understand. You will know that they are not broken, only paused. And you will be able to say with truth and compassion that feeling lost is sometimes the most loving guidance God can give, because it leads you away from who you are not, and gently back toward who you were always meant to become. God's answers are rarely loud, and this truth challenges the way most people expect guidance to appear. We are conditioned to believe that important things arrive with force, drama, and unmistakable signs. We imagine divine direction as a sudden voice, a shocking Eve, NT, or an undeniable miracle that removes all doubt at once. So when we ask God for answers and nothing dramatic happens, we assume we are being ignored. We wait for thunder, but God responds with a whisper. We wait for urgency, but God offers calm. We wait for certainty that overwhelms fear, but God gives peace that gently dissolves it. And because this peace is quiet, many people miss it entirely. The world trains you to listen to noise. Notifications, opinions, deadlines, expectations, and fears all speak loudly and constantly. They demand immediate reactions. They create pressure. They thrive on urgency. God's guidance does not compete with this noise. It waits beneath it. It does not force itself into your awareness. It invites you to slow down enough to notice. This is why inner peace is such a powerful signal. Peace does not shout for attention. It settles in your chest. It steadies your breathing. It brings a sense of, this is right, even when logic still has questions. Quiet clarity feels subtle, but it carries weight. Many people confuse intensity with truth. They think that if something feels strong, emotional, or urgent, it must be divine direction. But intensity often comes from fear, desire, or ego. Fear pushes you to act quickly, so you don't have to sit with uncertainty. Desire pulls you toward outcomes that feed identity or validation. Ego wants certainty, so it can feel in control. God's answers move differently. They do not rush you. They do not pressure you. They do not argue with your intuition. They feel steady rather than explosive. They feel calm rather than chaotic. Inner peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the absence of inner conflict. You can feel peace even when the path ahead is difficult. You can feel peace while knowing sacrifices will be required. This is how you know it is guidance and not avoidance. Avoidance feels relieving at first, but restless afterward. Peace feels grounding, even if the decision itself is hard. Quiet clarity does not promise ease. It promises alignment. It tells you that even if the road is uncertain, you are walking in the right direction. One of the reasons God's answers are quiet is because quiet answers teach trust. If guidance came only through undeniable signs, faith would be unnecessary. You would follow direction, out of certainty, not trust. But when answers come as inner peace, you are invited to believe without being forced. You learn to recognize the difference between anxious thoughts and grounded knowing. You learn to listen beyond surface emotions. You begin to develop discernment, which is far more valuable than constant instruction. Stillness is the doorway to this kind of listening. When you slow your body, your mind begins to soften. When your mind softens, deeper awareness can rise. God's guidance often appears not as new information but as recognition. Something within you clicks. A truth you already sensed becomes clear. A decision you have been avoiding suddenly feels obvious. This clarity does not feel exciting in a dramatic way. It feels relieving, like setting down a heavy weight you did not realize you were carrying. People often ask why God does not simply speak louder when they are confused. But confusion itself is often the result of too many loud voices already speaking. God does not add to confusion, He cuts through it. He does this by awing you inward rather than outward. The more you chase external confirmation, the harder it becomes to hear internal truth. Quiet clarity emerges when you stop demanding answers and start creating space for them. There is also a deep kindness in the quietness of divine answers. Loud answers can overwhelm you. Quiet ones meet you where you are. They respect your pace. They allow growth to unfold naturally rather than through shock. Think of how healing works in the body. Most healing is invisible and gradual. It happens cell by cell, breath by breath. God's guidance works the same way. It reshapes you gently so that when clarity arrives, you are ready to live it, not just understand it. Inner peace is not emotional numbness. It is emotional honesty without panic. It allows feelings to exist without letting them rule. When God answers you through peace, your emotions may still fluctuate, but they no longer control your direction. You can feel afraid and still know what is right. You can feel sad and still feel guided. Peace does not erase emotion, it anchors you beneath it. Quiet clarity also grows stronger with practice. The more you listen, the more familiar it becomes. At first, it may feel faint, easily drowned out by doubt, but over time you begin to recognize its tone. It feels consistent. It does not contradict your deeper values. It does not lead you to betray yourself. It does not require you to become smaller, harder, or less compassionate. God's guidance expands your capacity for truth, love, and responsibility, even when it asks you to let go of comfort. Many people fear quiet answers because they leave room for doubt. A loud command feels safer because it removes responsibility. Quiet clarity asks you to participate. It asks you to choose. It asks you to trust not just God, but the part of you through which God speaks. This can feel intimidating, especially if you have been taught to distrust yourself. But learning to trust inner peace is not arrogance. It is humility. It acknowledges that divine wisdom is not separate from you, but alive within you. When you ignore quiet guidance, life often grows louder. Stress increases, confusion multiplies, restlessness deepens. This is not punishment, it is feedback. It is a signal that you are moving against alignment. Conversely, when you honor quiet clarity, even small steps feel meaningful. You may still face obstacles, but they feel purposeful rather than draining. You may still encounter uncertainty, but it no longer paralyzes you. God's answers are also quiet because they are meant to be carried, not broadcast. They shape your inner life before they shape your outer circumstances. Peace begins inside long before outcomes change outside. This is why two people can face the same situation and experience it completely differently. One is fighting reality internally, the other is aligned with it. Quiet clarity changes how you move through life, not just where you go. Over time, you begin to realize that the loudest moments in your life were not always the most important ones. The most important ones were subtle. A calm decision made in solitude, a boundary set quietly, a truth accepted internally before it was ever spoken aloud. These moments rarely look impressive from the outside, but they alter the entire course of your life. This is how God works, not through constant spectacle, but through steady transformation. When you stop demanding loud answers, you start noticing gentle ones everywhere. In a moment of calm during prayer, in a sense of peace that follows a difficult decision, in the quiet discomfort that tells you something is not aligned, in the steady assurance that grows when you stop resisting what you already know. These are not coincidences. They are communication. Eventually, you understand that God has been answering you all along, not by shouting over your life, but by waiting patiently for you to become quiet enough to hear. And when you do hear, it does not overwhelm you. It settles you. It does not confuse you. It clarifies you. You realize that guidance was never missing, it was simply subtle. And in that realization, trust deepens. You stop searching desperately for signs and start living attentively to peace. This is the beauty of quiet clarity. It does not demand belief. It earns it. It does not force direction. It invites alignment. It does not overwhelm your will. It partners with it. God's answers are rarely loud because the most powerful truths do not need to shout. They rest calmly inside you, waiting for the moment you are ready to listen. And when you finally do, you recognize them not as something new, but as something deeply familiar, something that has always been there, patiently guiding you home. When external direction fades, it can feel frightening, as if the lights you relied on to navigate your life have suddenly gone out. For a long time, you may have depended on approval, advice, signs, rules, or expectations to tell you who to be and where to go. These external guides can be helpful for a season, but they are not meant to lead forever. There comes a point in every meaningful life when those outer signals grow quiet, not because you are abandoned, but because you are being invited to develop an inner compass. When the noise outside dims, it is not emptiness you are facing, but an opportunity to discover a deeper kind of guidance. Many people panic when external direction disappears. They feel exposed, unsure, and vulnerable. Without constant feedback from others, they question their worth. Without clear instructions, they fear making the wrong move. But this moment is not a trap, it is a transition. God does not intend for you to be dependent on constant external validation. He intends for you to mature into discernment. Just as a child eventually learns to walk without holding a parent's hand, the soul eventually learns to move without constant reassurance. The fading of outer direction is a sign of growth, not neglect. The inner compass does not operate through pressure or comparison. It does not measure your progress against someone else's timeline. It does not rush you because others seem ahead. It responds instead to alignment. When something is right for you, it feels grounding. When something is wrong, it feels constricting, even if it looks impressive from the outside. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is awareness becoming refined. When you stop relying solely on what others say you should do, you begin to notice what resonates within you. Developing an inner compass requires courage because it means you can no longer hide behind external authority. When you follow rules, trends, or expectations, responsibility feels shared. When you follow inner guidance, responsibility feels personal. You must own your choices. This can be uncomfortable, especially if you have been taught to distrust yourself. But inner wisdom is not self-centered. It is God-centered awareness expressed through you. It does not pull you away from truth, it pulls you closer to it. One of the hardest lessons in this process is learning the difference between inner guidance and inner noise. Not every thought is truth. Not every feeling is direction. Fear can mimic intuition. Desire can disguise itself as calling. This is why the inner compass is developed slowly, through observation rather than impulse. True guidance feels consistent over time. It does not contradict your deeper values. It does not demand urgency. It waits. It remains steady, even when emotions fluctuate. Over time, you begin to recognize its tone, just as you recognize the voice of someone you love. When external direction fades, silence often fills the space. Silence can feel uncomfortable because it leaves you alone with yourself. But within that silence, patterns emerge. You start noticing what drains you and what energizes you. You observe which environments calm your nervous system and which agitate it. You see which relationships feel honest and which require performance. These observations are not random. They are data for your inner compass. God speaks through awareness as much as through words. Many people try to escape this stage by filling the silence with constant activity. They stay busy, not because they are purposeful, but because they are afraid of what stillness might reveal. But clarity cannot be rushed. If you skip the inward turn, you risk rebuilding your life on the same misalignment that led to confusion in the first place. The inner compass needs space to calibrate. It needs time without distraction to become reliable. As you begin to trust inner guidance, you may notice that it often leads you away from what is familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even when it is limiting. The inner compass is not designed to preserve comfort. It is designed to preserve integrity. It will nudge you toward conversations you have been avoiding, boundaries you have been delaying, and truths you have been softening to keep the peace. These nudges may feel inconvenient, but they carry a quiet sense of rightness. This is how you know you are being guided, not controlled. External direction often focuses on outcomes. It asks, "What will this get me?" Inner guidance focuses on alignment. It asks, "Who will this require me to become?" This shift changes how you make decisions. You stop chasing approval and start honoring coherence. You stop asking what looks successful and start asking what feels truthful. This does not make life easier, but it makes it more honest. And honesty is the foundation of peace. When you rely on an inner compass, mistakes become teachers rather than verdicts. You understand that guidance is refined through experience, not perfection. You may take a step that later feels misaligned, but instead of condemning yourself, you listen, you adjust, you learn. This flexibility is part of mature faith. It recognizes that growth is dynamic. God's guidance unfolds through relationship, not rigid instruction. There will be moments when the inner compass leads you in a direction others do not understand. This can feel lonely. People may question your choices or urge you to be more practical, more conventional, more predictable. In these moments, you must decide whose voice carries the most weight. External approval offers temporary comfort, but inner alignment offers lasting peace. Learning to choose peace over applause is one of the most powerful acts of spiritual maturity. As you continue to listen inwardly, your confidence grows quietly. You no longer need constant reassurance because you have learned to recognize the feeling of alignment. It is not arrogance. It is grounded trust. You move through life with less panic because you know how to pause, listen, and adjust. You are not immune to doubt, but doubt no longer paralyzes you. You understand that clarity often comes through movement, not before it. Eventually, you realize that the inner compass was always there. It was simply drowned out by noise, fear, and the desire to please. External direction did not fail you. It completed its role. It guided you until you were ready to guide yourself in partnership with God. This is not independence from the divine, it is intimacy with it. God is no longer a distant authority giving instructions. He is a presence guiding from within. When the outer lights fade, you discover that you were never meant to walk by them alone. You were meant to carry light within you. This light does not eliminate uncertainty, but it makes uncertainty navigable. It does not remove challenges, but it gives you a way to face them with integrity. The inner compass does not promise ease, but it promises direction that is true to who you are becoming. In time, you look back and see that the loss of external direction was not abandonment but initiation. It marked the moment you stopped living by borrowed maps and began trusting your own alignment. You began walking, not because someone told you where to go, but because something within you knew. And that knowing, quiet and steady, continues to guide you even when the world grows loud again, reminding you that true direction was never outside of you, but waiting patiently within, ready to lead you forward with wisdom, courage, and faith. Stillness and humility are often misunderstood in a world that rewards speed, confidence, and certainty. We are taught to believe that power looks like control, that strength means having answers, and that progress requires constant movement. So when life invites you into stillness, it can feel like weakness. When circumstances humble you, it can feel like loss. Yet in the deeper spiritual truth, illness and humility are not signs of emptiness, they are gateways. They are the conditions that soften the heart enough to receive guidance that cannot enter a crowded, defended, or self-assured mind. Stillness does not mean doing nothing. It means stopping the inner noise long enough to notice what has always been there. Most confusion is not caused by a lack of answers, but by too many competing voices. Thoughts race, fears argue, expectations shout, and memories interrupt. In this chaos, even truth struggles to be heard. Stillness clears the space. It does not force clarity, it allows it. When you slow down, your nervous system relaxes, your breath deepens, and your awareness widens. You begin to sense rather than analyze. And sensing is where divine guidance often lives. Humility works alongside stillness. Humility is not self-criticism or self-doubt. It is honesty. It is the willingness to admit that you do not see the whole picture. It is the courage to release the illusion of control. When you are humble, you stop pretending to know what is best in every situation. You become open rather than defensive. You listen rather than argue internally. This openness creates space for wisdom that does not originate from ego, fear, or habit. Many people struggle to hear God because they are trying to listen while already convinced they know what the answer should be. They approach prayer, reflection, or guidance with hidden agendas. They are not listening to receive truth. They are listening to confirm desire. Humility dismantles this posture. It allows you to say, sincerely, I am willing to be shown something different. This willingness is powerful. It signals readiness. Guidance flows most easily into hearts that are not clenched around outcomes. Stillness also reveals what distraction hides. When you are constantly busy, you can avoid uncomfortable truths. You can outrun grief, ignore misalignment, and delay necessary change. Stillness removes these escapes. At first, this can feel unsettling. Thoughts surface. Emotions rise. Unresolved questions demand attention. But this discomfort is not harm. It is healing. God often answers not by giving you something new, but by bringing your awareness to something you have been avoiding. In stillness, you begin to recognize the difference between fear-based thoughts and truth-based insight. Fear feels urgent, repetitive, and demanding. It pushes you to act immediately or not at all. Truth feels calm, even when it challenges you. It does not rush, it does not threaten. It simply presents itself and waits for you to be ready. This difference becomes clearer the more you practice quiet presence. Humility deepens this discernment because it weakens ego's need to be right. Ego wants certainty because certainty feels safe. It clings to identity, labels, and plans. But growth often requires you to let go of who you thought you were supposed to be. Humility allows this release without shame. It allows you to say, I am learning, instead of, I have failed. This shift changes everything. Learning invites guidance. Failure invites self-judgment. When you combine stillness with humility, prayer becomes less about asking and more about listening. You stop presenting demands and start receiving insight. You may notice that answers do not always arrive as words. Sometimes they come as a deep sense of peace about a decision. Sometimes they come as discomfort that refuses to leave until you address it. Sometimes they come as clarity about what no longer belongs in your life. These forms of guidance require sensitivity, not force. They require a heart that is quiet enough to feel and humble enough to accept. Stillness also teaches patience, and patience is essential for spiritual understanding. Some truths cannot be rushed because they need time to mature within you. If answers arrive too quickly, you might resist them or misuse them. Waiting allows wisdom to integrate. It allows your character to catch up with your insight. God's timing often feels slow to the mind but precise to the soul. Humility protects you during this waiting. It reminds you that not knowing is part of becoming. It frees you from comparison. You stop measuring your journey against others because you understand that growth is personal and layered. This reduces anxiety and opens space for trust. You realize that guidance is not a race to the finish line, but a relationship that unfolds over time. In moments of stillness, you may also become aware of how much pressure you place on yourself. Expectations, perfectionism, and fear of disappointment often drive restlessness. Humility allows you to lay these burdens down. You recognize that you do not have to earn guidance through effort or suffering. You only have to be receptive. This realization softens the heart and quiets the mind. Many spiritual breakthroughs occur not during moments of intense striving, but during moments of surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means letting go of resistance. It means trusting that you do not need to force understanding. Stillness creates the environment for surrender. and humility makes it safe. Together, they allow insight to arrive naturally, without pressure. Over time, you may notice that the more you practice stillness and humility, the less dramatic guidance feels. It becomes woven into daily life. You notice subtle shifts in perspective. You respond instead of react. You pause before deciding. You feel when something is aligned, and when it is not. This sensitivity is not mystical, it is relational. It grows through attention and trust. Stillness also reconnects you with your inner life. You become aware of your values, your fears, your longings, and your contradictions. This awareness is essential, because guidance does not bypass your humanity, it works through it. God speaks to you in the language of your own experience. The clearer you are about what is happening inside you, the easier it is to recognize what is being offered to you. Humility keeps this awareness grounded. It prevents insight from turning into pride. It reminds you that guidance is a gift, not an achievement. This keeps your heart soft and your spirit teachable. You remain open to correction, growth, and deeper understanding. When life becomes noisy again, as it inevitably will, the practice of stillness allows you to return to center. You no longer panic when clarity fades temporarily. You know how to wait. You know how to listen. Humility reminds you that guidance does not disappear because you are imperfect or distracted. It waits patiently, ready to be received again. Eventually, you realize that stillness and humility are not just tools for hearing God, they are ways of living. Why shape how you relate to uncertainty, conflict, and change. They allow you to move through life with openness rather than defensiveness, curiosity rather than fear. This posture makes guidance a continuous presence rather than a rare event. In this way, the heart becomes a listening space, not silent in a rigid sense, but receptive, not empty, but attentive. Stillness quiets the noise. Humility opens the door, and within that space, guidance flows naturally. You stop striving to hear God and begin to realize that God has been speaking all along, waiting for you to become still enough and humble enough to listen, not with anxiety or demand, but with trust, patience, and an open heart. Trusting the next inner step is one of the most difficult and sacred acts of faith a person can learn. The mind wants certainty. It wants the full plan laid out clearly, with guarantees and visible outcomes. It wants to know where the road leads before it takes a single step. But life, and spiritual growth especially, rarely work this way. Instead of giving you the entire map, God offers you a direction, a nudge, a quiet sense of move this way. This can feel frustrating, even frightening, because it asks you to walk without seeing the whole path. Yet this is not a flaw in the design, it is the design itself. Faith is not about knowing everything in advance. It is about learning to move with trust in the present moment. When you wait for total clarity before acting, you often remain stuck. The future cannot reveal itself to someone who refuses to step into it. Trusting the next inner step means accepting that clarity unfolds through movement. You do not walk because you are certain, you become certain because you walk. Each step reveals the next, like light appearing just far enough ahead to keep you moving. The inner step rarely feels dramatic. It is often small, simple, and easily dismissed. A conversation you feel drawn to have. A habit you feel called to release. A boundary you sense needs to be set. A direction that does not excite everyone else but brings you quiet peace. Because these steps do not look impressive, the mind doubts them. It asks how something so subtle could lead anywhere meaningful. But growth is built from small, faithful movements, not grand gestures. One of the reasons trusting the next step feels so challenging is because it requires letting go of control. Control offers the illusion of safety. It convinces you that if you can plan enough, prepare enough, and predict enough, you can avoid pain or failure. But control also limits growth. It keeps you operating only within what you already know. Trust opens you to what you cannot yet imagine. It allows life to meet you in ways planning never could. There is also fear of making the wrong choice. Many people hesitate because they believe one wrong step will ruin everything. This belief creates paralysis. But spiritual growth does not operate on a single correct move. It operates on relationship. Guidance adjusts. If you step slightly off course, awareness brings you back. God does not abandon you because of imperfect choices. Learning happens through experience, not avoidance. Trusting the next step does not require perfection, it requires willingness. The next inner step often asks you to act before you feel ready. Readiness, in the deepest sense, comes from trust, not confidence. Confidence is a result of past success. Trust is a commitment to move even without it. When you wait to feel fully prepared, you may be waiting indefinitely. Many important transitions begin with uncertainty, because uncertainty stretches your capacity. It forces you to rely on something deeper than comfort or habit. When you honor the next inner step, something subtle but powerful happens. You build trust, not just in God, but in your ability to listen. Each time you act on quiet guidance and see how it unfolds, your fear softens. You realize that even when things are challenging, you are supported. You learn that alignment matters more than immediate outcomes. This builds a form of confidence that is not loud but resilient. The next step is often about character before circumstance. It shapes who you are becoming, not just what you are achieving. You may want answers about career, relationships, or purpose, but the inner step might focus on patience, honesty, or self-respect. These qualities prepare you for the life you are asking for. Without them, even the right opportunity could become a burden. God often works from the inside out, strengthening the foundation before expanding the structure. Trusting the next step also teaches you to stay present. Instead of living in imagined futures, you engage with what is actually in front of you. This reduces anxiety and increases awareness. You begin to notice opportunities, support, and insights you would have missed while worrying about the entire journey. Presence becomes your anchor. You stop asking, "What if?" and start asking, "What is being asked of me now?" There will be moments when the next step feels uncomfortable or counterintuitive. It may go against logic, expectation, or social pressure. This does not mean it is wrong. Growth often requires you to move beyond familiar patterns. The inner step challenges you not to abandon wisdom, but to expand it. It invites you to integrate intuition with reason, rather than letting fear dominate either. As you practice this kind of trust, you may notice that the path does not unfold in a straight line. There may be pauses, detours, and recalibrations. This is not failure, it is responsiveness. Faith is flexible. It listens, adjusts, and continues. The goal is not rigid obedience to a plan, but ongoing alignment with guidance as it emerges. Trusting the next inner step also deepens humility. You accept that you do not need to know everything to move forward. You release the pressure to perform certainty for others. You allow yourself to be a learner rather than an expert in your own life. This humility keeps you open and grounded. It allows guidance to remain a living dialogue rather than a fixed instruction. Over time, the next step becomes easier to recognize, not because life becomes simpler, but because your sensitivity increases. You learn how guidance feels in your body and mind. You recognize the difference between anxious impulses and grounded nudges. You trust peace more than urgency. This discernment is developed, not given all at once. There is a quiet joy that comes from living this way. It does not depend on dramatic success or public validation. It comes from knowing you are aligned, even in uncertainty. Each step feels meaningful because it is taken with intention. You stop rushing toward destinations and start honoring the journey itself. Eventually, you look back and realize that the path you were so desperate to see in advance could only have been revealed through movement. The lessons you needed could not have been taught theoretically. They had to be lived. Trusting the next inner step led you not just to places, but to maturity, depth, and resilience. In this way, faith becomes practical. It is not an abstract belief, but a daily practice of listening and responding. You wake up, you pay attention, you take the step that feels aligned, and you trust that the rest will meet you along the way. You do not need the whole map. You need honesty, courage, and willingness. The next step is enough. When you embrace this, uncertainty loses its power to intimidate you. It becomes a companion rather than an enemy. You understand that not seeing the whole path does not mean you are lost. It means you are being guided moment by moment. And in this guidance, You discover that faith was never about knowing where you are going, but about trusting who is walking with you step by step from the inside out.